Okay, go ahead.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Jim Galvin from UC San Diego, and we're delighted that you're all here for our session, Successful Summer Programs. I'm joined by my colleagues, Danielle Sonnet and Zach Frieders, and we have a short session today of just 20 minutes, but we really wanted to profile some campus-based programs that you may find of interest. These are wonderful opportunities for students, and we'd like to give you an overview of the session. Next slide, please. So Zach is going to talk about the UC Davis model for embedded programs. I will cover the UC San Diego internship model, which is similar to other UC campuses. And Danielle will discuss UCLA's funding and participant diversity. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zach.
All right, thanks, Jim, and good to see everyone here in the session today. I'm going to talk briefly about the UC Davis embedded programs. It's a working name that we have. We have a couple different models, but the concept that we're looking to develop here is based on a pilot that we ran under what we called a seminar abroad program in Nepal on community technology and sustainability. And the real context of these programs is how we can both leverage shorter term programs either during, say, the winter break or the very beginning of summer, but also extend the students' learning experience during the academic year. So the quarter preceding their travel abroad, getting some content, making connections on the site, which helps keep the cost low for the students because it's a shorter travel period, but is very much embedded with the local communities. And so that's the structural name of embedded programs. Next slide, please. The pilot that we ran, it's been now a couple years. 2018 is when we first ran this program in Nepal. And this model was effectively an extended fall quarter program where students take a course on campus during the 10 weeks preceding travel to Nepal for 3 weeks during the winter break. This program is 30 students in total, 15 UC Davis students, 15 Nepali students, and they work throughout those 10 weeks before they go abroad to develop relationships, to talk about project planning together, to learn about the community in which our Davis students will be living, and importantly, talking about authentic needs and solutions around the research projects that students will be doing. So I'm going to let them actually speak for themselves. So if you go to the next slide, please. I have a short video here that is reflections from our students as well as our faculty lead for the program.
So the Nepali Seminar Abroad program is a 3-week course over winter break, and you get to implement projects in Nepal. You get to visit both major cities in Nepal and also implement your rural projects in rural Nepal. In order to achieve those projects, you'll have to have a prep 4-unit course in fall quarter before you take off to Nepal. So I think the Seminar Abroad program really helped me gain an understanding of how I could use my skills.
Over the course of about a year, our in-country coordinators from Hands-On Institute worked with village leaders from Machaputre, which was a small rural village about an hour outside of the urban area of Pokhara. And they identified key priorities that were going to be useful for the village and feasible for the students to do in an intensive 10-day process. So over the course of the fall, when the UC Davis students were working together here and the Nepalese students were working in Nepal, they worked on team building. There were actually these early morning Skype and Zoom calls between the different teams, 13-hour time difference, and also just learned about how to work together in a project-based learning way.
Go to the next slide here. So I think hopefully what the video conveys is not only the structural components of the program, but I think what we see is a real value where despite students only being on site for 3 weeks, this extended time with their colleagues before they go really give them an incredibly immersive experience, frankly, more so than some of our traditional summer abroad programs. And because they're project oriented and community engaged, there's a real focus on understanding students' positionality, understanding culturally responsive engagement with the activity of study abroad, which is something that we're very mindful of, and making sure that this isn't sort of sort of a savior complex, cultural voyeurism, that students are actually getting to make meaningful relationships and co-creating solutions with their colleagues on the ground. This is a really successful program over the past couple years, and it's a model that we want to extend. If you want to go to the next slide. And the reason why it's slated here in the successful summer programs is that we want to now transition this into a model that works over summer. Nepal was selected for winter break primarily because of the climate there. But we hope to do the same thing here in this upcoming summer. We've got 4 programs planned, all occurring at the end of spring into summer, which currently these are designed as 3-week standalone programs with the option to include this pre-travel deep community engagement in the future. And again, reflecting on this deep immersive community engagement piece, it also gives us a really strong framework to overlay work around the SDGs on things like human rights. So the portfolio of these programs is very much focused on those larger global systems in a way that isn't reflected quite as much in our summer program. So lots of enthusiasm from our students. We've had some focus groups that has given us good feedback on this, and we're happy to report back on how these programs go in the summer of 2024, maybe at next year's conference. So thank you, and I will turn it on over to Jim to talk about programs at San Diego.
Thank you, Zach. UC San Diego has been running summer internships now for a couple of years, and we'd like to share a little bit about this model, the goals, the model itself, our pre-departure preparation for students, how we manage the programs while students are abroad, how we advise students upon their return, as well as next steps. Next slide, please. So our goals have been to meet the underserved need for global career exploration on campus. So we have partnered with one of the colleges on campus in a pilot program to develop career opportunities, to also help students internationalize their resumes, to develop some intercultural understanding. And the main goal, of course, is to help students confirm or revise their career goals. Next slide. Our model is one that is very similar across several of the UC campuses. Berkeley, Santa Cruz, Davis, UCLA, all have models that are very similar, though not necessarily exactly the same. At San Diego, it's an 8-week summer internship. Students are abroad for that full period of time. They are placed in an organization or a business, and they typically have 25 to 35 hours a week of internship. The UC San Diego faculty member teaches remotely from California, and there are 2 courses. There's an internships critical inquiry course, and then another on communication and rhetoric. So the first course, the students are primarily getting credit for that internship, and the second course is really a reflection on work and culture. Now, we partner with a study abroad provider to offer the on-site logistics and the internship placement as well as oversight. And we launched our pilot in Dublin in partnership with the 6th College at UC San Diego. There are multiple disciplines available for 6th College students: social sciences, business, education, nonprofits, and the size of the program is capped at between 20 to 22 students. As a point of comparison, many of our counterparts on some of the other UC campuses may have internships that focus on primarily one subject area or department, like economics and business or political science. So depending on your campus, you may find slight variations to this. Next slide. So pre-departure, our goal is to help find the right type of organization for the student and determine what skills are needed. And our advisor for this program, Lisa Armstrong, helps the students with that. She partners with the study abroad provider to help students develop their CV to prepare for the interviews. The provider then arranges the interviews and then will confirm the placement with the organization. Next slide, please. So once the students are on site for the 8 weeks, the provider takes care of all the logistics, housing, health and safety, emergency support, quality control. In case the placement isn't working out, they can help support the student, and also to provide some coaching as needed, because sometimes there is some cultural adjustment. In the meantime, the professor is teaching remotely. Next slide, please. Upon return after the 8 weeks, we realized that this is just the beginning of the journey of self-discovery. So we connect the students to our Career Center. We encourage the students to internationalize their resume and to develop an elevator speech for job interviews, graduate school, and then also to encourage them to seek other internships. Next slide. The next steps for our model will be to eventually expand beyond the pilot to build more connections with other colleges as well as departments, also to expand beyond Western Europe. And if you'd like to learn more about it, you can go to our website, which is globalseminar.ucsd.edu. And as I say, many of the other UC campuses also have excellent internship programs. Several of them are open to students from campuses throughout the UC system. So we hope you're going to be able to send some of your students abroad on internships, whether it's through the campuses or through UCEAP. Danielle?
Thanks, Jim. So my contribution is an interesting case study in what happens when you cancel a program, some donors show up and say they want to give you a lot of money, and then you turn it around and run a program with more open access to students. So this is a brief story about what happened this spring with our program in Rome and Pisa. It's a food studies program, and I'm just going to go through a quick overview of how we turned it around and what impacts that had on our participant diversity. Next slide. So the UCLA Travel Study Program is a faculty-led set of programs that we run exclusively in the summer through UCLA, and they are open to students from any campus and from any school. So they're actually open nationwide. We have a 4-week summer program called Atlantic Foodways, Culture, Science, and Governance. And this year we were really struggling with the enrollment. As you can see, by winter 2023, we'd only really achieved 3 confirmed enrollments in the program, despite the very interesting topic and all the best efforts of our 2 faculty representing both UCLA Law and UCLA History. At the point we were deciding to cancel the program, unbeknownst to us, our development colleagues in undergraduate education had also been working with a couple of donors who were interested in contributing to food studies programs. And about 2 or 3 days after we canceled and started unpacking all the arrangements and letting go of all of our agreements, they said, wait a minute, what if we give you substantial funding for all 22 of your minimum number of enrollees? With that, we quickly reestablished the program, brought it back online, worked out new arrangements, and brought back everything that we needed to run the program. And then we opened up the application. And I can tell you, with that amount of money that they gave us, we were able to go from canceled to full 22 enrollments in about 2 weeks. So it was a really interesting study on what happens when someone is going to be generous and help you put it back together. Next slide. So the couple of things that we looked at after we had the enrollment reopened and started to see what impacts might this have on the profile when, all things being equal, the program fee was substantially reduced. We found that we had a wide range of group affiliations, a wide range of majors, students from all different backgrounds. It was mostly undergraduate still, but 20 from UCLA, including 1 graduate student. And we actually had 2 students from other campuses who benefited as well from the scholarship. Interestingly, we did have more STEM majors than you would have expected on a program with history credit. It turned out just about 4 history majors and 3 minors. The rest of the students represented biology, anthropology, psychology, nursing, art history, political science. So it was very interdisciplinary in a way that surprised even the faculty. And it also had impacts on site with people bringing different perspectives and contributing to the course discussions in a way that I think even challenged the faculty to sort of adopt and not assume that students necessarily were even foodies. They mostly just wanted the experience and had varied interests in joining, partially because of the scholarship, but also for the unique opportunity it represented. Next slide. So this is a summary of the breakdown based on things like gender, race, financial aid. I just looked through all of the data from summer as a whole, and these metrics are really similar to what we see in travel study in general. I was interested to see if there was any increase in certain diversity factors or if the gender breakdown, if it opened it up to more males or something like that, but it does seem to have held steady with the travel study profile. Compared to UCLA study abroad as a whole, however, travel study does have more financial aid recipients. It tends to be 50-50. Campus as a whole is closer to like 70% who are non-financial aid recipients. So it's interesting to see that held true. Even with the donor funding, it didn't go beyond what normally we see in travel study. It was still the 50-50 split. Gender across all of UCLA study abroad, it's also about 27% male. So again, kind of hitting the average. The breakdown of race was a little bit different for certain identities, but this doesn't necessarily account for multiple in this version. So I'm still curious to unpack that a little bit more. All things being equal, it seems like the biggest impact really was more on the disciplines and the academic backgrounds of the students, more so than some of these other diversity profiles. But I'm curious to see if this would happen again if we were to have a situation like this in the future. So with this happy accident, I thought I would share just some of the impact statements that we got back in the letters that students gave us to share with the donors. They definitely represented that a lot of them would never have done a program like this, maybe not this topic, or maybe not study abroad at all if they hadn't received the scholarship. So the qualitative assessment does kind of hold true to what I anticipated I would see. People really felt like they appreciated that diversity in terms of interests and what they were bringing to the program, and definitely saw quite a number of them who said they'd either never traveled out of the country before or had never thought that they would be able to fit in study abroad at all. So that was true and did seem to kind of match what my expectations were from an opportunity like this. And give it a second, just in case. Okay. And so next steps, our outcome, the takeaway from this is that we're going to obviously continue to partner with development colleagues on campus. We're looking at ways to get ahead of it, so we're not having to rebuild, but maybe get more prospective donors who know earlier on that this could be an opportunity and what the impacts could be if they were to choose to give to a study abroad program like this. So kind of building a narrative around it and communicating back to the donors, not just the ones who did it in this case, but others who are looking at ways to contribute, maybe seeing if there's other lower hanging fruit in terms of like funding for flights or funding for passports, things like that don't necessarily tie it to one specific program. But in this case, making sure that the campus is really aware of the different opportunities we have and that our alumni network is really aware of specific programs that could benefit from it. That's kind of where we're headed next, just to see if we don't replicate it, if we can increase awareness and try to create that pipeline to create a more level playing field for our students. And with that, I think we have about 2 minutes left for a couple of quick questions. If anybody has anything in the chat, I'm happy to pass it to whoever is appropriate. I'll take a look here and see if anything's in there. So far, no. Any questions from us?
I'm curious to know if any of the other campuses, Davis or San Diego, have you ever worked with your development offices specifically for funding study abroad program participation, similar to UCLA?
At UC San Diego, we have worked with development to establish some scholarships for our faculty-led programs. And one of our goals is to ramp that up going forward. So yeah, that's an important source of funding because unfortunately, due to the fiscal situation, some university-sponsored scholarship pools have been reduced substantially or eliminated. So donor funding is going to be a key avenue for promoting mobility going forward.
Yeah, same at Davis. I'd agree. What I would add is we're working with our development and our internal colleagues who work with potential donors on creating access funds. So being able to provide students scholarships and grants before they even decide to participate in study abroad, so the money is in an account that they can then use to make their decision to study abroad. We're ways off on it, but to answer your question, yeah, that's a key partnership with us for development.
Okay, we are at time. So thank you, UC System colleagues, Jim, Danielle, Zach, for presenting today. I'm going to stop the recording.